You're tuned in to RX Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to RX Radio. I have no idea what episode we're on. We're closing in on 600 episodes, which is insane. Today, I'm joined with those of you that know, you already know who Veronica is. If you don't, well, I'm glad that you're here because you should know who Veronica is. Veronica Zucala, am I saying that right?
Zucala, yeah.
Zucala. All right, I should have asked that
As long as you don't say
here.
zucchini, we're good.
All
I
right,
got a
no.
lot of that growing up.
No, I'm pretty dumb, but I wouldn't say that. So Veronica is here with us. She is our newest hire at Prescript here.
Yeah.
Is it Thursdays, your lab session?
Yeah, Thursdays at 1:30 Eastern time.
Cool. So if you guys are in the collective, if you're in the level one, make sure you drop in. You say hi to Veronica. But this is going to be more of kind of an introduction. Veronica was telling me how she listened to the podcast for a while, which is always crazy to me to hear that people actually listen to this. But that's the cool part, is that it connects us with, people like you. And I recently had the pleasure, I guess the second year in a row now, Veronica was out for the level 3, helping us run the Combine camp, and absolutely crushed it. So I'll shut up a little bit, but welcome, Veronica. It's great to have you here.
Awesome. Super exciting to be here.
Yeah.
I think you want me to just do a little intro on me?
Yeah, let's start there. I think that's good.
Cool. I have been working as a personal trainer full-time for almost 7 years now. It'll be 7 years in March. This is not a career I ever would have thought I was going to have. It was definitely when I first started a job. It wasn't even a career. It was for sure a temporary fun thing. And then I just realized so quickly how much I loved it. I was simultaneously doing my master's when I started doing this. And very quickly I realized I loved one thing a lot more than the other. So I still completed my master's, did what I could, but I definitely put a lot more time into the gym. And it was interesting. My start was kind of interesting because I was in the commercial gym setting. But I think I was telling you a little bit about it back in Tampa last week. But I was working as a research assistant at the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, short or acronym for it's CHIO. And I was working in the healthy active living and obesity research department. So basically studying activity levels, but really in our sense, it was inactivity levels because people around the world are not very active. And we had this report card that we put out every year called the Participation Report Card. And essentially it gives countries around the world a grade for how active they are. And Canada received a D or a D minus for like the 4th year in a row, something like that.
Damn.
And I remember looking at I really thought this was going to be my path. Hospitals have pensions, you got good salaries, it's a nice secure job, smart people earn research, so I could fake it till I make it. Everyone would think I was smart. And then I looked at my supervisor and I said, well, D's not very good. So what do we do about this? And he looked me in the eye and he said, oh, well, we're going to start next year's report. So we'll just work on that. And I just realized in that moment, I was like, we're not doing anything to help people or anything to make this better. So that was a bit eye-opening for me in that moment. And very quickly after that, I think within the week or two, I grew up playing a lot of sports, loved going to the gym. I knew from age 11 or 12 that I was an anatomy nerd, like learning about muscles, origins, insertions, actions. It was the coolest thing ever. I was infatuated with like the sliding filament theory and everything that had to do with it. So a trainer came up to me in the gym. I was there for my workout. And he said, hey, have you ever thought about being a trainer? And I looked at him. I said, no, but that sounds a lot better than what I'm doing right now. So I'd be down to give it a try. And that's kind of how I got started. And then I was commercial gym setting for a few years, on my own for a few years now, working out of a private facility close to home with a former colleague of mine from my commercial gym setting. We have a really good working relationship. We've always worked really well together. He was a big influence for me when I first started. So when he said he needed extra bodies to fill some hours, I jumped on it right away. And then I've been taking Prescript courses since 2020. And I was telling the new L1 students today, I've been listening to RX Radio probably since about 2018, 2019.
Okay.
And I was telling the students that were coming into the L1 this week, I said, I do believe that PSL1 will give you what it gave me. But what it gave me was the ability to do my job so much better. It really takes everything you know about the human body and makes it 100% applicable in a way that I haven't seen in the industry yet. Like what you guys do and the way you talk about, that's why I used to listen to RX Radio all the time. The way you talk about the body and how to execute exercise is totally different from everyone else, but it really should be the gold standard. Because I was talking to a client today. She's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu athlete. And it's like, hey, our goal is to create an adaptation and have enough of a stimulus to create that adaptation, but have you still perform? And that's going to come down to exercise selection and the way that we're structuring your workouts. Because we can have you still go hard in the gym and have these workouts be hard, but there's a way to do it where you can still perform the next day. And so I've learned all that here. So it's really cool to be here.
Well, that's unreal. And the thing is, watching you as you move in the gym setting, it shows me how you've learned these things, because it's cool to talk about it. Like, that's what we do. We talk about it on the internet, but actually being in the gym and putting these things into action, like it's one of my favorite things when I see like someone come into a scenario and they have such this kind of idealistic way of what training should be, that they just get frustrated with what's going on. And I saw that in you multiple times at the level 3, and not for, not to put blame on anyone or say that it's not a great program or anything like that, but it's in real life, things go wrong. They don't go according to plan. There's miscommunications, things get messed up along the way, but seeing someone that cares so much about the details or the orientation of the details around exercise and program execution, like that's really refreshing to me, because I know, honestly, probably a lot of the start of this podcast, kind of like what you're referencing, like 2018, was a lot of frustration on mine and Shallow's part because of things that we were seeing, not just, in the gym setting, but in the industry as a whole, that were really frustrating. And like, there's people that are just kind of missing the idea all the way around. And that's kind of where this was born. And I think that's what brings in people, or like unites people like you and I, and like the rest of the crew, is that I think there's a lot of people that have really good and genuine intentions. And that's, kind of coming back to how you got into training, is that's exactly why I'm here too. That's why I never left, because I went to school. I, followed the dream that, academia will provide you with, the future that you want to have and all the nice things in life. And then you kind of get into it and you realize like, oh, like, no one really knows what they're doing. A lot of this is bullshit, and no one's actually making a difference. And it's really frustrating to kind of realize those things in real time. Like, after you've done the work to get to the place that you thought was going to be where you can make a difference. And then you get there and you're like, oh, like, no one's really doing anything here. And
not actually helping people with what I'm doing right now.
Right. Exactly. So that's kind of how this podcast and this company was born. It was like the frustration about that and literally just venting about it. So like, having lived that myself, that's a very real experience for me. And I can completely relate to that. And then like kind of seeing that in other people it's really interesting to me now, because I don't want to say I'm removed from it, but I think I'm just jaded on a lot of things that like I expect like certain things from, certain industries, or like I understand that like certain things are the norm, even though they're less than ideal or what I'd want to see. But like there was this energy that you had in that gym that was really refreshing for me to see. Said no, like people do still care about this shit, and it's like that's really cool to see. So I
think those high expectations are good though too. Like it's frustrating because not everyone's going to meet them, but having those high expectations means that the people that do meet them are going to be more drawn to you. Yeah. And like, I know you guys, I saw you guys look at me a few times last week where I tried not to have a look on my face, but I'm pretty sure I was scowling as I was looking at someone. And you guys would just come over, like you, Shallow, Dante, what do you see right now? And I would just be staring at an athlete moving. And I don't like that. I don't like the way it looks. That could be better.
Yeah, there's in that sort of setting, there's almost a fine line that you have to play, is like realizing, all right, this is the reality of the situation. Like the level 3, we're working with college football athletes that are probably the best in the country and therefore the world at what they do. So it's not like they're not athletic. It's not like they don't know how to move their body, but they're just, the way I was thinking of this is like, what the gym is just the gym to them. The field is like, that's the arena in which they play in. And like almost what it was is that the pre-script coaches that come in, like the gym to us is what the football field is to them. Right. Yeah. It's like everything has to be perfect. And it's like so idealistic. So it's an interesting thing in that sort of scenario, because I think a lot of people that come in to do level 3, what they'll be surprised about is like, hey, these are like elite level athletes, but they don't know how to move worth dick in the gym. And that's
Yeah.
like an interesting thing, because like I think a lot of people just think that someone that performs at a very high level in a sport, like they're very good at everything that encompasses that.
Yeah.
And especially with these kids, I'm going to say kids because they're still fucking kids
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
weight room. Like it's that's there to support them in what they do, but they're not focused on necessarily getting better at that. Maybe a small percentage of them are, but a lot of them, it's, you know, it's just another box they have to check or a thing that they need to do so that they can get better at the sport of football.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting communication piece in all of this, where, okay, we need to get this person to move better. They don't really have an understanding of what they're doing wrong or why it's wrong. So like you need to be like very quick and concise in the cues that you give to get these people to move in a better way, but it's without going into like a full dissertation of, you know, why they need to do it and like every single nuance to it. So that's a really interesting kind of space to operate in, is that like, okay, we're kind of in this position coaching the coach, like the prescript coaches, but ultimately we're coaching the athlete. So you have to be really concise here, and then you can have kind of that sidebar later with the coach of like why you made that intervention and like how you're able to make it so effectively.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we had, I think our coaches last week were really, really great at adapting.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, in that environment, things are constantly changing. And it was, like you said, the athletes, like they get in there and they're amazing on the field. They're unstoppable, but then you put them in the gym setting. There's one athlete in particular. He had zero lateral expansion through his rib cage in 3 movements in a row that we did that were intended to open up the side of his rib cage. But then I watched on the highlight reel, because they have the highlight reels of all the athletes on the big screen there. I watched the highlight reel where he jumps up for a ball and intercepts it like this. I was like, man, you can get there. You just don't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to see that. So again, it reiterates that what we do is going to be helpful for them, because if they can navigate that and navigate their body and space a little bit better, got not preventing injury in any sense, but they're going to be, if they're stronger in these vulnerable positions, they'll have probably a lesser chance of getting injured. Their performance will go up. They'll be able to recover a little bit better. And it's such a cool environment. And I think our coaches, they got, I think, what I got out of it too, which is exactly that you got to know when to cue and when to just shut up and when to step back. And some of these guys like over explanations and some of them don't. Some of them, you're the 100th coach they've worked with that year and they couldn't care less what you say to them. They're just going to do what they're supposed to do. Because like you said, they're using this as a means to get to where they want to go. They don't care about us. They don't care about the workout as much as we do. They just want to get from A to B. And we're part of facilitating that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a point you made in there, is that it's so interesting because there is such a big discrepancy in how a lot of these players look on the field in the gym. It's such a low hanging fruit for them to get better at what they do on the field, because they don't even have that awareness of like, okay, like a rib cage moves this way or a hip moves this way, or I'm having trouble running my route because I can't post off my left foot. And like those correlations that, you know, with the training that you or like I or like the prescript coaches have had, it's like, oh, like we can relate that back to like maybe 2 to 3 exercises that player should be doing. Like just do these indefinitely and you're going to get better at that. And that's a really cool part of this whole process, is like, it's almost like they're speaking the language of football, we're speaking the language of gym, and then we're interpreting their language and like bridging the gap. It's literally like we're translating the athleticism from the gym to the football field. So it's a really cool role to be able to play. And it's really cool to, I think a lot of people in their, you know, day to day in their gym setting, there's like, you know, yourself as an example, very high performers. And there's this very deep understanding of everything. But then you get out into a world where like that knowledge that you have, it fills a void that there's a big need for. It's really satisfying to be able to do that. So
yeah,
I think that's one of the coolest parts of the experience for me, at least.
100%. And even just being in that room, I mentioned it to you on the first day, I think we're there, second day, that you have to earn the right to be in a room like that. And I remember going in, and as a student, I did not feel like I belonged in the room whatsoever. It was my first time in that kind of environment. And when I went back around this time, I was like, no, I'm good. I'm like calm, cool, collected. The energy is very different in the room. these guys' careers are on the line. It's not just, I mean, I think every client needs to be treated with the exact same effort and the exact same level of organization and planning. There should not be a difference between athletes, non-athletes. You should always be putting 100% effort into every client you have. But for some people in their personal lives, this will matter more because these guys are trying to get life-changing money for their families, for generational wealth for themselves and their kids. And so if we do something wrong, we're fucking that up. And
Yeah.
so it's a cool pressure to be a part of. Yeah, I like the pressure. I think it makes me better. It makes me focus in more. It makes me prepare. But if you're going to crumble under the pressure, then don't be in the room. So
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a unique experience because yes, it's these high level athletes. And I think something I've realized working with athletes for, I don't know, a lot of my career now is that, yeah, at first, like you see, maybe you know the name or you see who it is, or like you see the highlights of what they do, or like you see the number of commas in the contract that they have. And you're like, oh, fuck, like this is wild. Like it's so much pressure. But then once you start working with them, like especially, there's a caveat to this is you have to again belong in that room. You have to be qualified enough. But it's so easy. It's so easy. Like it's if you do this every day, you work with 40 people in a week that like
yeah.
might be more challenging than that one individual. It's just the things that are wrong with that one individual, they're going to have again a lot of zeros in the impact of this person's life. So that's one of the things I really like about it is like this, if you are good at what you do, you will perform at what you do no matter what. It's very similar to like I grew up wrestling. So like when I wrestled, there's this anticipation for the match. Like, the kid's record, like what they're good at, like what they're known for. And then you go in there and you're like thinking about every possible scenario. And then you get on the mat, you shake hands and they blow the whistle and all of that goes away and you just do what you do. Like you perform at what you know how to perform at. And sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. But like I very much feel the same way with training, especially in like a high anticipation setting, is that when there's someone that like, oh fuck, like this person's got like a $33 million contract, or this person's like, they're knocking on the door of a world record or whatever it is, like then you start working with them and you're like, oh, like I know what to do. This is just the same shit I do with every other person that, their hip doesn't internally rotate or they don't have an understanding of pelvic stability. So that's a really cool part of it to me. And then the other part that I think is really cool that I'm eternally grateful for is getting to coach in a room with people like yourself, like Killian, Shallow, Dante, like everyone that comes out. It's because that's what I think the learning experience of the level 3 is like, as long as you coach people, you work with people on a day to day, like, okay, you can tell them how to do a split squat. You can tell them how to do, I don't know, a Hatfield squat. Sure. But like seeing how other people communicate and like what they look for, what they're watching and the things that they put importance on in terms of the interaction, in terms of the experience and all of that, that's the type of learning that you can't get like online. You can't get in a textbook. You can get in like a practical gym setting, but a lot of times, like, I don't even know the number. We've had coaches come out over the 3 weeks in Tampa from probably about 10 or 12 different countries, right? So it's like literally we're pulling people from all over the world to give this sort of experience. So like it's very rare that you'll have a high concentration of that many high level coaches in one specific gym. So it's cool to see like not only the high level athletes, but the coaches come in and do their thing at such a high level too.
100%. I'm not learning when I'm in that room, I'm not learning from what I'm actually doing. I'm learning from what everyone else is doing. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, again, that in-person experience of working with one-on-one clients, you do learn a ton as you go. That's where you get all that practical experience, but it's such a condensed, I learned more in the 6 days of doing that L3 than I would have in 3 years of training clients or like 2 different courses that would have spanned over the time of year. You know what I mean? So there's people that are doing it so much better than you in the room and it brings you up. Like I always reference when I refer to something like that, I love being around people that are better than me. I love it because it makes me better. When I was growing up, my brother and I were very competitive with each other. He's 5 years older. And anytime we'd play it, he never let me win. Anytime we play anything, he would destroy me down to my core. We got a foosball table. we probably played 40 games in the first couple of days. I didn't win a single game, and he would dust me. It'd be like 12-0. But then when my friends would come over and they weren't that good at foosball, I would dust them. And it's like,
Right.
oh, well, I wouldn't be able to dust them if I didn't get dusted in the first place. So I've always loved being around it. Everything I've done, sports, like I've always loved playing with people that are better than me. Work, I've always loved being around people that are better than me because it brings you up. It's nice once in a while to have like some wins and feel like you're doing something good and feel like maybe you're coming out on top with a W. But at the end of the day, you're going to learn a lot more from your losses ever than your wins. So when you're around people that have so many more wins than you, that's where the real learning happens.
Yeah. That's such a good perspective to have. And there's so little ego in that. I know a lot of people, like, especially coming from a setting where you're the trainer in your gym or in your area, like there can be an ego that comes with that. But then when you get in a situation where you're not the guy anymore, like you're the low man on the totem pole, then people like that can have a really hard time with that when there's so much opportunity to get better from that. And that's like something that I really respect, is that attitude of like, all right, I'm here to like see what I suck at. And I want to really know what I suck at so I can improve that, so that next time I can go back and I could, dust the coaching I do in my gym and then come back, next year, the level 3, and like really perform and tell these trainers what they need to work on. So I really like that perspective. There's so much to be gained from that. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, checking the ego. There's a lot of it everywhere. Ego is not a bad thing either. Like, ego is a good thing because that's what you got to
have it in this industry.
You got to feel good about yourself. You got to know that you're doing something right, that you can't do a job like this successfully without having a little bit of an ego. You just got to know how to check it. And so I think, I'm a 5'8" lanky Italian who was always very mediocre at sports. Like I shouldn't have much of an ego in the first place, but I know that I work really hard. I know that I can push the limits. People are always telling me like, oh, you're a lot stronger than you look. I'm like, thank you. I'm glad I have deceived you. But you got to feel good about yourself. You got to get those compliments and know that there's going to be some rooms you go into that you're a top dog, and you got to own it. Because if you don't own it, people are going to smell it. And then there's rooms where you go into where you got to read the room right away and recognize, oh, okay, this is not my domain. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to assess a little bit longer, and then I'll assert myself when I need to, but no sooner, because I don't want to step on toes. I want to see what the big dogs in the room are doing first and then go from there.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And a lot of these, like the situations we're in, especially working with players that have had 100 coaches, is like, if you don't even pretend like you're confident, like you don't necessarily have to be confident, but you need to portray confidence when you're talking to someone that's got 100 different people in their ear telling them 100 different things. Like they're not going to listen to you if you don't sound like you're confident in the thing that you're telling them to do. So that's something that, like, I don't know, probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned. And like, I kind of resented this idea of like fake it till you make it early on in my career. I'm like, what? Fuck that. That's so dumb. Like you don't deserve to make it if you don't know what you're doing. But like, I think there's a side of things, like the technical side of things, the intellectual side of things. Like, no, you can't really fake that. Like you have to have that. But I think like confidence, that's something that you got to fake it until you have it on your own.
Yeah.
Even in a room where it's like, say there's probably by the end of the week, we had 15 coaches in there. We had a bunch of different people. It's like, there's a lot of people wearing the same shirt, telling them this, maybe even different things. So it's like, if you're the one that's quiet and like, you're a little bit uncertain of what you're telling them to do, like they're just going to brush it off. They're going to go to the next coach and like say, hey, what am I doing? So it's like, you got to fucking assert yourself, and you got to be confident in the things that you're saying, even if it's wrong, even if it's fucking wrong. And I'll tell you that, like, I was out there for 3 weeks at that camp. Before everyone got on the same page, we kind of had a recalibration midway through. It's like, fuck, I told people a lot of wrong shit, but I was confident as hell when I said it.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the thing, is like the person on the user end of that, they're probably not going to know a difference, even if like you realize later, it's like, yeah, I kind of fucked that up. Like it's supposed to be contralateral instead of bilateral, like little things that like in the grand scheme, it doesn't fucking matter. But like in terms of consistent messaging, yeah, maybe it does matter. But the player never knew, just because I'm absolutely certain this is what we're doing. And then later I'll be like, oh fuck yeah, no, that wasn't it. I'll do that better next time.
100%. Like context, like fake it till you make it has context. Because I use that term all the time, half jokingly. But it's like, okay, the context is you're not faking what you know about exercise, and you should not be faking how to execute these exercises, because those are the things that matter. That's where people can get hurt. So that you do not fake it till you make it there. But if it's, oh, this B stance RDL, and they ask you how many reps, and on the sheet it says 8, but you tell them 12. It's like 12 reps. That's fake it till you make it. The athlete's not going to know the difference. And 8 reps to 12 reps, who gives a shit? If they don't have trust in you, that's going to hurt you a lot more at the end of the week than if you got them to do 4 less reps on an exercise. So there are certain things where I remember the coaches I was working with, I told them that a couple times. I was like, just say it with confidence. Doesn't matter. Like, know the workout, but if you can't remember if it's 10 or 12 reps, just pick one and be really fucking confident with whatever rep range you give them, because then it builds trust. And that's a big thing in that room. Not just with the athletes, but with the other coaches too. If you can earn some trust, you have a much smoother ride and your week's going to go a lot better. And I think that's the same in any room. You can't, if I break one of my clients' trust, one, they're not going to keep paying me to come in. So there goes that bit of my business. But 2, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, it's very much read the room, read the person, understand what they need, and then execute from there. Because clients are going to need different things. Some of them need you to just assert yourself and have it be what it is. Others might need a little bit more. So,
yeah, it's a big one too. Is like just reading the room, because a lot of time, like in a team setting, like you kind of have to take on a persona for the entire team, right? It's like you are this person and guiding them in this way for all of these people, and that's almost a little bit easier than the one-on-one setting, because say you do both, right? One-on-one and team setting. Yeah. So like one-on-one clients, you have say 6-8 clients in a day. You might have to be 6-8 different types of trainer in the day for them, versus like a team comes in, you're just yelling at all these brats the same way. So it's that can be a really hard part of this job in general. And that's the part that, like, I don't know if you can fake that or not, but that's like the one-on-one communication, like the emotional intelligence side of this, that I think makes it hard for a lot of people. Is that, all right, if I'm coming in, like, there might be someone you need to be able to understand their motivators, the things that are going to drive them relatively quickly. Like, I'm talking within a session, so you can get them to come back for the second one. When sometimes it's like, I have people that like literally like it when I tell them, like, yo, that looked like shit. Why are you being a bitch right now? Like, come on, let's fucking try this time. And I have other people that it's like, oh no, it's okay. Like, you tried really hard on that one, but I want you to try a little harder on this one. And like, you really have to be gentle to them and kind of read the type of communication that's going to get them to buy in. And like, some people, they're literally paying you to for the accountability. Like, I've had people tell me before also, like, I know exactly what to do. I just pay you because I won't come in if I don't. And I'm like, right, that's fine. We have that understanding. And then there's other people that are like, if you're not hard on me, I'm not coming back. Like, I can do that too. That's actually way more fun for me.
100%. You have to be a little bit of a sadist to do this for a living, because you just watch people suffer in like the best way all day, and it's the most fun but they love it. They keep coming back for it. And I totally agree. You have to learn how to understand the client, sometimes within a few minutes too, because I've got clients that it's the same client might need something different from me on a Monday than they need from me on a Friday. And I have to be able to read it really quick and understand when they come in. And you really only get that experience working one-on-one, or not one-on-one necessarily, but working in person with people. And that's why I have a ton of respect for those that do the online coaching. I think it's a really great business model. But there's no way I'm ever leaving the in-person setting, because this is what fuels it. This is what makes my job so fun, is actually being there with the client. First of all, my job's way easier when I'm there, because I can directly see what they're doing and correct every single thing that I need to as we go. I don't have to wait for them to send me a video and then hope that they didn't finish the rest of their sets or the rest of the workout, or wait till next time. So I love doing the in-person. I've got a ton of one-on-one. I've got teams. And like you said, you're putting on different hats. I remember when I first moved in. So I live with my best friend. We bought a house together a few years ago because we wanted to get into the housing market and make it a financial commitment. And the partners we had at the time, we weren't with for too long. So we said, oh, well, this relationship has lasted longer than any of our other ones, so we'll just buy a house together. It'll be fine. And so we bought a house together. We lived together. And so we've been friends for over a decade. And so she knows me really well, but she's never seen me at the end of my workday. So the first couple weeks we lived together, I'd come home and I would be sitting there and I would just be a shell of a human being eating my dinner. And I'm
Yeah.
a pretty upbeat and positive person. And she looked at me and she's like, "Are you okay? Like, do we need to talk about something? Are you depressed?" And I was, "No, man, I just spent 12 hours putting on different caps for different people, reading the room, being social all day. And I've got a big social battery, but like when you're at the gym for 12 to 14 hours, like that battery's gone by the time you get home. So I need to
Mhm.
go to bed and recharge it before tomorrow. So I'm not going to be my same energetic self at the end of a day like that. I need to recharge a bit before going back in."
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point because like it's you have to approach every single client with that same energy no matter what. And that same
Mhm.
energy might look differently, but you're there like you're switched on. You're interpreting every single thing they're saying, their body language, like the way they're moving. And that's just like the interpersonal stuff. And then there's like the coaching, the technical side of stuff is that like, all right, you have to know the workout, you have to make the progressions, you have to communicate that. Like sometimes you have to get the buy-in in session. So it's like it's mentally taxing. And I think that a lot of people aren't getting that experience now because of the online industry. And let me take an aside here and say like I completely agree. Like I will always have an in-person component to what I do, no matter no matter the we'll say cost to that, because it's a lot of times it is like more lucrative doing this online than it is in person. Not always. I think a lot of good trainers do really well in person, but it's a lot harder too because it takes a lot more energy. And it's like, okay, it might take a you might have to get motivated to get in front of your computer and like I don't know, drink some coffee or do whatever people do to get motivated to get on their computer.
Mhm.
But
Coffee, always coffee.
coffee, more coffee. Yeah. uh, I mean, you saw my coffee intake this past week, so.
I almost had a Junta special before this call, but I had like enough coffee. I had 2 cups of coffee the other day, two like 12-ounce cups, and I was vibrating for like 5 hours. So I was like, I do not need a Junta special of 5 shots of espresso at 1 in the afternoon. For this will not go well.
No. Don't take after me in that. But it takes a lot of energy, and it's people can feel if that's off in session, right? Because they come back for that. Like that's why they're there. They're for you specifically. It's not the workout that you give them. It's not, maybe it's the gym, the equipment, but the reason they keep coming back is you and what you
Mhm.
provide to them in terms of that interpersonal. Because a lot of people like the gym is their only social interaction outside of like forced interaction at work and that. So like not some people like the fact that they're coming in, they're talking to you, like that might be the highlight of their day or that might be their social interaction for the day. So it's like you need to be able to execute on that unspoken expectation of like, hey, I'm going to show up, I'm going to have the energy, I'm going to give you the attention that you deserve. And that's fucking taxing. Like I'm
Mhm.
the same as you. After a long day, like I just want to sit down on the couch. Like I don't care if there's any noise. Like it can be a quiet apartment. I just want moments of peace. I don't
Yeah.
care what that is. I just want quiet and I want peace because I've been listening to like every single type of genre of music blaring in my ears all day, like weights pounding on the floor all day. Like I've been yelling
Yeah.
at people. Like it's been a day. It's been a long day. So that is like a kind of a less talked about part of the profession is like, hey, like this is going to drain you. So you better really enjoy what you fucking do or
Yeah.
else it's just going to like beat you down. You're not going to want to do it anymore.
And that's why there's so much turnover in the industry too. I was a manager in the commercial setting for a while. On my first day, I had 2 trainers quit. I was like, oh, okay, sick. See you later. And I wasn't even a manager because it was during COVID. So it was open, close, open, close. So I was maybe actively in the gym for 8 months out of the year. I was a manager there. And I had a small team. There was maybe 8 trainers on it. And I had like 5 people leave. I had to rehire 3 and then 1 left and I hired another one. It was just, there's so much turnover because people think that if you love working out, that you'll love being a trainer. It's like, no, there's a lot more to it. You got to love everything about it. And I remember a trainer from the commercial setting told me in my first couple months of working there, he said, if you're not the same trainer for your 6 a.m. client that you are for your 6 p.m. client, either change your schedule or go get another job because you got to have that same energy going into every session throughout the day and you got to be prepared for that. And I think that's one thing I'm grateful for. Every manager and person I've had along the way, I've had a really fortunate experience in this industry where I've had nothing but unconditional support from management, from other colleagues. People have always really lifted me up and believed in me. And but the good thing that they did for me too was they set that expectation. Where they said, hey, we know you can be really great. We believe in you, but just so you know, it's going to be really fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like my manager in the commercial setting, when I first started, he said, hey, just so you know, no one's ever done a master's degree while they've worked a job like this. Like, this is not something that you do both. He's like, I don't see it working out, but if you think you can do it, then you're hired, kind of thing. And so I took that as a personal mission to make it work. So I was like, oh, well, if you're going to tell me I can't do it, then obviously I'm going to do everything in my power to do it. So it was the perfect motivation. But he set that expectation where he's like, this is going to be really fucking hard, just so you know. If you can do it, awesome. But he's like, I've yet to see it, so good luck.
Yeah, that's great. I fuck with that heavy too. It's like, oh, you told me I can't do this. Well, let me show you. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, let's dig into that a bit because correct me if I'm wrong. Your master's is in neuroscience.
Yep.
So what was the deciding factor to pursue a master's in neuroscience? And then kind of, if you could lead me into like how that led you into more the gym setting. I know you kind of brushed over that, but like how that applies
100%.
and how that transfers in your day to day.
100%. So I started with my undergrad was in biology. And when I did my undergrad, I had a little bit of room in my schedule to have a minor. So I ended up double minoring in neuroscience and psychology while I did my undergrad. And I fell in love with the neuroscience department. I've always loved the body. I told you I'm an anatomy nerd. I have been since I was a kid. My brother took an exercise science, like high school level course, and he forced me to help him study. And that's where I started learning about muscle origin insertion at like age 11, 12. And I knew right away, I was like, this is the coolest shit ever. And so when I started learning more about the brain, it was just one of those things where I was like, man, we're never going to fully understand this organ. This is wild. And that's why I really love the psychology piece too. When I did my double minor, 'cause it's like, okay, the physiology and the psychology, like chicken or the egg, man, like what's affecting what here? Because you don't know when it comes to the brain. It can go back and forth. And so, I found it so fascinating. So when I graduated, my undergrad, I was able to do an undergrad thesis through CHIO, through the Children's Hospital. So that's how I kind of got on to working there afterwards on a contract. And I was starting to be a part of some big projects. They were bringing me in on more stuff, but they told me that I took a gap year after I finished my undergrad, traveled a bit, and then was working at CHIO. And they told me, they said, hey, we can only keep you on contracts here and there unless you have a master's degree, because then at that point we can hire you full time. And I was like, okay. And at that point, that was kind of the goal. So I said, all right, well, I'll apply for a few masters. I was supposed to do, if I applied for a master's in kinesiology, I could do it through CHIO because they had a new study coming up that I was part of some of the preliminary stuff called ramping up neurocognition. So it was essentially looking at like kindergarten age kids. So it's like 4 to 6 years old and how physical activity will improve neurocognitive function.
Wow.
And so this was going to be a really big cross-Canada study. And I was like, okay, so I applied for the master's in kin, so that would have been my thesis had I gone that route. I also applied for a master's in epidemiology, which, given the fact that we had a pandemic 2 years later, is hilarious, and that definitely would have been applicable had I chosen the research route. But there was just something about neuroscience I just loved, and again, I've just always been drawn. Anytime I'm really drawn to something, I let it take me where it's going to go. And it has nothing to do with like having faith and putting it out there and manifesting. It's just strictly, I like this, so I know I'm going to try really fucking hard because I like this. Yeah. And so I applied for master's in neuroscience as well. I got into all three. And so it's hilarious that like the two that probably would have been more applicable are the ones that I XNA'd. But I ended up choosing the master's in neuroscience because there's just something about it. I was like, no, this is really cool. My thesis was pretty cool. It was focused on post-traumatic stress and how owning a pet can be helpful for people with post-traumatic stress.
Love that.
And so, yeah, it was really cool. So the only downside was that I was collecting saliva samples in the middle of a pandemic. So they had to cut all of I was trying to measure cortisol and it just did not go well. So it's a bit of a shit show given some circumstances I couldn't control. But that was kind of the road. I was trying to get my master's so that I could get full-time work with what I was doing instead of just being on these contracts. And I had already applied for all my masters and gotten in and accepted at the time where I realized I wanted to try the commercial gym thing. I said, oh, well, like I'll do it. I need a job right now anyway. I have to make money. And so worst case at the end of this, 2 years later, I'll come out with a fancy piece of paper so I can get a big girl job and maybe I'll have enough money in my account that I can buy a house because I'll work really hard and do both. So that was kind of my thought process at the time. And like I said, couple months in, it was very clear. I'd go to school and be like, oh, this is annoying. And I love learning. I've always loved being in school, but I'd go there, I'd be like, I could be working with a client right now. This kind of sucks. And then I'd go to the gym and be so stoked. So it was pretty clear which one I liked more than the other. But yeah, that's kind of my education background and how I got there. But now that I was selling in my L1 lab, the first one I ever did, doing my first lab, I did not know they were going to ask me questions about myself. So that was stressful. I really thought I was just going to answer exercise questions. So when they started asking me to talk about myself, I was like, fuck. Just word vomited for an hour. At one point, I just started naming brain parts, and I don't think I had any like rhyme or reason for it. I was just like, this seems like it'll be fine
These
later.
are words.
These are words. I'll fill the space. But I told them in my first L1 lab that I was so validated when I took L2, because there's a whole part of the course on the nervous system. And it's all stuff that I knew from my background with my minor and my undergrad, and then my master's. I was like, oh shit, yeah, this stuff does apply. This is awesome. That fancy, expensive piece of paper wasn't for nothing. So
that's unreal. So aside from that validation level 2, because who are we here? But how does this neuroscience and even the psychology is really interesting to me? How does that apply with what you do on a day-to-day basis? Do you find crossover in things that you can apply just with training clients?
100%. I think the neuroscience side of it, understanding pain and how it operates in the nervous system, has been a big thing for me, because I can relay that to my clients. I think in a way, I think any trainer uses the tools you have. I happen to have this piece of paper. I don't think it makes me better at my job than anybody else, but because I have this tool, I'm going to use it. Yeah. And so having that in-depth understanding of the brain and the nervous system, I did a handful of anatomy, physiology, biomechanics courses in my undergrad as well, doing biology. So I think having that in-depth understanding makes me better at communicating it. So if I have a client come in and they're in pain, I can explain to them what's happening as a result of that pain and the steps that we're going to take to mitigate it. And it makes it much easier for them. It was funny. I was talking to a client yesterday, and I was just explaining like posterior, anterior oblique slings, and that's stuff that you learn in L1. But I was explaining she was in a lot of pain with her low back. She's an athlete. And I was explaining, I've explained it to her a handful of times now, like the slings and how they work. And so as I'm taking, again, I was explaining, with pain, we move from, it's very slow stimulus, and exercise is a very fast stimulus. So we need something in between. We need that intermediate stimulus before we can take them into a heavy duty exercise. Otherwise, they're just going to seize up. Their nervous system's going to say, hell nah, we're not doing this today. And then everything gets tighter. So before we started the workout, I took a gun and I was just digging into her glute med. And immediately she got a ton of low back relief. And so it's understanding that pain perspective that, okay, if I can just get you out of a little bit of pain, who gives a shit what people say about Theraguns? If I can pull you out of pain and have you move better, perfect. That's what we're going to do. And as I'm digging it into her gun, right away, I was like, do you know why we're doing this? She's like, yeah, the crossbody thing, right? That sling. And I'm like, perfect, the sling. And so I'm like, if you know it, I did a good job of explaining it. Awesome.
That's incredible.
So I think that piece. And then to answer your question about the psychology piece, I think it's funny. I took a handful of classes. I took a positive psychology class. I took a sports psych class. And I don't know if I necessarily sometimes I'll use like a strategy here and there. But my main focus is being able to read the person, get them to trust me, and have them walking out of the gym, maybe not necessarily feeling like it was the best part of their day, but having them feel better when they walk out than when they walked in. And that could be from a workout where they get absolutely crushed, or that could be from getting them from being in pain to a little bit less pain or out of pain. And I don't know, it's hard to put it into words how I do that, because I just do it. And that's why sometimes, you said it before, that we talk for a living, like doing this stuff as we educate and teach people how to prescribe exercise and work with clients. But sometimes I do find it hard. I think when you know something really well, it's easy to explain it. But sometimes I find it hard. I don't want to explain it. I just want to show you. Like sometimes L1 students will ask me these questions in labs, and it's like, I'm going to answer this because I know I can. But this would be a lot better if you could just see me do it. Like watch me interact with my client. Watch how like my body language changes as if I want to tell them something important or add a cue, the way I move my body forward. If I want to be open and receptive to what they have to say, how I kind of step back and open up my hands and like appear really open in my stance, not standing there with my arms crossed and waiting for them to tell me they're like the worst part of their day, right? So I think it's reading the room, reading people. You have to be good with people, and just having that understanding that like, you just got to do it, and you got to see how people do it to really understand it.
Yeah, that's such a powerful point. And I love that so much because that applies in so many different contexts for me. And like even from like an example from the level 3 is like I can explain knee pain as good as anyone that explains knee pain, right?
Mhm.
But some people don't give a fuck. Like they don't give a single fuck. Like I have a guy that he's having a hard time changing direction for the 5-10-5 because his left knee hurts and it gives out when he puts pressure on it. Like I'm not going to explain to him every detail of, core stability and hip rotation and, like tendon stiffness and all this stuff to him because he doesn't care. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make you feel a difference in
Mhm.
how your knee feels right now and 10 minutes from now after we go through these 3 exercises, because that's going to get so much more buy-in for him in associating that to his end goal of running faster in the 5-10-5 than me explaining to him why this is going to help him. So
Mhm.
that's like, I completely agree with that sentiment. I love that so much because that's how I tend to get buy-in with clients because yeah, I can talk about this stuff, but I've talked about this stuff ad nauseum. Like I don't even like listening to myself talk about this stuff anymore. So it's like, yeah, I can help you, and then I show them how I'm going to help them. Right?
Yeah.
If you can get someone to feel a difference in, if it's a massage gun and something for the posterior oblique sling, and they feel better, it's like, oh, like I didn't think I was going to be able to work out today, but now I feel
Mhm.
pretty good. Let's give that a try.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much more value in that than being able to verbalize it. And that is dynamic. That's just like wearing 8 different hats for your 8 different clients in the day. It's like every one of those clients is going to respond a little bit differently. But
Mhm.
I think the one thing that's universal is when they leave you, they're still going to feel the sensations of their body. Right.
Mhm.
And if you can have a positive impact on that, even if like, you were off that day and you missed on the interpersonal stuff a little bit, they're going to be able to appreciate like, like I've been in pain for 3 months now, and like I got 4 hours of relief after that session before it came back. And it's like just that little break in that constant sensation, it can be really impactful to someone. And that can be the thing that, it buys you the time to get the interpersonal stuff going if you can at least get them to feel a difference or show them a difference in the sensations or make an impact on the thing that they need to have an impact on.
100%. 100%. It's just you approach them like a human being and you say, hey, I'm sorry that you're feeling that today. Why don't we try a few things and we'll see if you're feeling a little better. It's like, oh, your back hurts when you're hinging. Okay, let's try a few things and then let's see if you feel better. And that's again back to full circle what you were saying at the beginning. It's so easy when you have an understanding of the body and you know what to do because that's all you have to do. You don't have to over explain. You can just say, hey, we're gonna try a few things. We'll see if you're feeling better. And we know in our heads that they're gonna feel better, but
Mhm.
we never guarantee it. We're just gonna leave it open and leave it up to them to decide that they feel better at the end of the session. And yeah, it's so cool. That's one of my favorite things about the job is having people come in and just you blow their mind sometimes. And it's the simplest stuff. It's just having that understanding. But again, we've committed our lives to having this level of understanding so that we can do those things. So
Yeah. And I'll be fully transparent because, like, I think a lot of people blow smoke on the internet. Sometimes I don't have a fucking clue if I can make a difference in what they're feeling. But that's that component of like fake it till you make it. Is if
mhm,
you have confidence that what you're going to do is going to help, and like even if it's on a less specific level, like okay, you have knee pain. I don't know what's causing it, but I know things that have 100 times in the past have helped with knee pain. So even if this doesn't directly fix what you're feeling right now, this will have a positive impact on the mechanics through that area that will, very realistically take tension off of that so that you can move with more ease and probably, if not make this better, at least not make it worse. So it's like
mhm.
there's all the fucking time. Every single
Yeah.
time, it's like, all right, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something and I'm going to do it with confidence while
Mhm.
I get some traction and I use the things that I do choose to do with confidence to gain more information on things that might have a positive impact or a negative impact. Because the more information that you have, then you can just be more accurate in assigning, okay, these are the things that are going to be most impactful. These things may be a little bit less impactful, but they're not negative. So that this is going to be like, all right, this is a little bit of busy work stuff that I can make them feel like they're doing something, but I know for a fact, like these are the things that are going to make an impact. And that's kind of like, again, taking it full circle, like the fake it till you make it. Like, you need to have a basis for that, but you don't have to have it all figured out. And like, give yourself the room to figure it out. And sometimes it's important to communicate that, like, hey, I don't really know if this is going to work, but X, Y, and Z has worked really well with similar things in the past. Let's try that. And other times it could just be like, oh yeah, I got you. Like, let's come on over here and let's use this massage gun for a bit. And then we're going to stand on one leg and X, Y, and Z. And those are the things that, like, just the level of confidence you have towards something that can get the buy-in around it. So it gives you the space to make a change. I think a
100%.
lot of people, they operate in that supreme confidence with very subpar ability. And that's the hard part in the training industry. Kind of like you said earlier, it's like you have to have a little bit of ego, but some people have way too much ego and no basis for that.
100%. 100%. I spent, you really learn. I mean, I spent a few years doing very casual, like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and there's no better way to check your ego than constantly getting the shit kicked out of you by just everyone, especially when you're new and you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
But I think, you either need to learn how to check your own ego, or you gotta have people in your life that'll do it. Like, my friends are great at that. They are hilarious. As soon as I start getting a little too high on my horse, they just kick me right down. They're like, nah, man, come back down here with the rest of us. Get off of there. You're fine. Like, so I think, I'm in a fortunate position where I've always had support from people within, like, the industry. I've always had support, like, in my personal life. And so those things, I think, have really contributed to how I've gotten to where I am today and why I'm able to do my job at the level that I can. But having that ability, again, it comes back to, you need that base level of understanding. And it's like, okay, so you have knee pain. It's like, especially you're a clinician, so you can speak a little bit more. You can do some of those hands-on assessments. You have a wider scope of practice than I do as a personal trainer, strength conditioning coach, whatever you want to call it. But I have a bit of a narrower scope of practice. So I'm not diagnosing anybody. I have no idea what's going on, but you tell me you have knee pain. Okay, well, I understand how the foot works. I understand how the knee works. I understand what the hips do. So we're going to try a few things that get them working the way that they're built to work, and we'll probably be able to find some kind of solution. And if not, then I'm going to refer out, and I'm always very transparent about that. My scope of practice means that there's some times where it's like, hey, here's my line for scope of practice. And at this point, I'm just going to refer out and send you to a clinician, somebody that can formally diagnose this. And then that way we know exactly what's going on. But 9 times out of 10, it's something that you can correct in a gym setting. You just have to have that base level of understanding of how the body works and how to apply it with the equipment you have.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's such a nice, I'll call it a scapegoat, but it's like such a nice reality to have, is that, like, at a certain point, it's not your responsibility to figure this out anymore. Right. So if you can have that conversation, you can communicate with them like, hey, this is what I'm going to do for you, and this is what I can do within my scope. And if you're willing to give that a try and treat this in a more conservative manner, I think we can have some progress. And then again, you're getting buy-in around what you can do. And if it starts to deviate from something you're comfortable with, like, hey, I think you should see a clinician about this, or I think it's time to get some imaging on this because we're not seeing improvement at the rate I'd like to see it in the areas that I'd like to see it. And I'll be honest, like, yeah, I do have a bit more of a broad scope because I am a clinician as well, but I have the same exact conversations with every single one of my clients, because for me, the conversation that I have to have a lot of times is, should I get surgery or not? Right. And I think that's like maybe a step above the conversation that a lot of personal trainers or strength coaches will have, because it's not really up to them to give guidance in that scenario. It's like, talk to your clinician, talk to your provider, like, see what they say. But like, I'm the guy that I have to talk to about that a lot of times. And the thing is, like, because of my background, I take the same approach that you would in that. It's like, hey, like, and I do have a bit of background knowledge in situations that, like, all right, maybe you should get surgery, maybe you shouldn't. But I'd say 9 times out of 10, the people that come to me, like, they come to me because of what I do. And it is more of a rehab setting. It's people that are motivated to get better without going under the knife. I'm like, let's give this a try. Like, give me 6 to 8 weeks. Like, I've had, I don't know, a few different rotator cuff patients in the last like 6 months. And it's very clearly a rotator cuff tear. And the conversation I have is like, look, there is damage to the tissue here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get surgery if you don't want to get surgery. So I can give you things that will help your shoulder function better and take stress off of the rotator cuff tendons. And then we can see where the pain and the functionality levels out at that point. And then we can make a decision then. We don't have to make it right now. And I don't think the conversation has to be any different, whether you're a trainer, whether you're a clinician, but you do have to have that knowledge. You do have to have an understanding of how the shoulder works and how you can assess to see where their deficit in that shoulder complex is. And if you can make improvements somewhere in there, anywhere in there. This is the part that I'm talking about that, like, I don't fucking know a lot of times, but I'm going to continually assess in the aspect of, I'm watching you every single time that you move. I'm watching for, lack of core stability. If you have trouble moving or stabilizing the scapula in a certain plane, or like shoulder rotation, like where does this deviate from what I'd want to see? And those are the things that I try and clean up. More times than not, you'll have a positive impact on the symptoms that they're having. And yeah, sure, there'll be times like a complete rotator cuff tear. I'm not going to tell anyone that I can fix that with exercise. Like, yeah, maybe go get the surgery, but like, grade 1, grade 2, like on the more minor side, like it's going to heal to some degree. Let's see how it heals. And then if you don't have the level of functionality that you'd like to have out of that shoulder, then let's talk about surgery. And I think that's like almost a blanket statement that you can have that conversation if you're a trainer, but you're just maybe approaching it with a little more tact around like giving them direction. But you can have a lot of confidence in telling them what you can do and what you'd like to see in that process.
100%. And you said it too, where you just need time. Like, give me 6 to 8 weeks. It takes tissue time to adapt. So you need to get that buy-in, and you're not going to fix a rotator cuff issue in 2 or 3 hours. It's going to take a few weeks. But if I can give you a few things within those first few hours that help you feel a little bit better, that's the buy-in. And then that's all you need. And I used to tell trainers that all the time too. And I was in more of like a manager role when I was at gyms, and I was responsible for training them to be good trainers. I said, all you need is more time with your client. If you can get them in for that initial consult, that initial hour, all you need to do is get them to stay with you for a couple more hours. Because the more time you have, the more time you have to build that rapport. There's thousands of trainers out there that are really, really great at their job, and that client could go to any one of those people and get the same result. You are the difference. And you alluded to that before too, where they're coming for you. So once they get their results, they're going to keep coming back for results. But those initial few weeks, they're coming for you because they've got that buy-in. And so as long as you can have them feeling a little bit better or have a good time. And again, in your case, talking just about like scope of practice with clinicians versus like my realm and what I can handle, the biggest thing is that they have fun too in the first few hours. Because if they have fun, they're going to want to keep coming back to you. The gym I currently work at, that was one of the first things I asked him, the owner of this gym. He worked with me in the commercial setting, as I mentioned. And I asked him in the first couple of weeks, he had a ton of clients. He always had a full roster. Even now, he's always feeding hours. And I asked him in the first couple of weeks, I said, what's the trick that you like to use? And I know there's no magic thing to it, but what do you do to make sure that clients keep coming back? How do you get them to sign up for these big commitments, these big contracts? He said, make sure they have fun. It's like the results are going to come as you go, but if they don't have fun, they don't want to come back and pay you their money. So if you can make sure they have fun, if they're in pain, make sure they're in less pain after they leave you. That's how you get that buy-in. And then with enough time, they keep coming back, that adaptation is going to come. And then from there, you can make that decision. Because like you said, I mean, I partially tore my ACL in the summer. And so Canada's terrible for like MRIs and doctor's appointments. Like this free healthcare thing is great on paper, but it's a pain in the ass. So I tore it at the end of May, and it took me until mid-August to get my MRI. And I was hustling. Like I was working the system. I was getting on cancellation lists. I had my requisition in 2 days after I'd torn it. And so it took me a couple months to get my MRI. Got my MRI. And it took me another month after that to meet with the surgeon. And at that point, it had been 4 months. So any tissue around it was healed. And because it was a partial tear, which I didn't know at the time, I figured it was ACL when it happened because I was just falling over for no reason. And I was like, this makes sense. And the mechanism of injury was full on just knee valgus too. So I was like, yeah, that checks out. There's probably something going on here. Tissues are definitely torn. But it wasn't until I got that MRI result. And he was like, yeah, well, he's like, how do you feel? And I was like, I've been working out. I'm strong again. I'm lifting heavy weights again. I'm just, the only things I haven't done, I'm avoiding like plyometrics, change of direction, sport, just in case, because I don't know how bad this tear is. But I was like, I'm working out. My body feels good. Like I feel strong again. He's like, yeah, you don't need surgery. You're good. There's enough tissue intact. Because by the time I got to the surgeon, he was like, yeah, everything's healed. You're good. If it's
Cool.
going to fully tear, it's going to fully tear. But that would take like another traumatic injury. So he's like, just go about your life. And I was like, sick. Okay. So I got the green light to just start doing what I was doing before, which was cool. But
Yeah, that's unreal.
like you said, the tissue takes time, and you don't always need to go the surgical route. And so when people are coming to you asking you, it's like, well, there's a chance we can make this non-surgical. And if you can avoid surgery, that's always best case. If you can avoid going under and you can avoid more tissue damage and more inhibition, because then that's a longer period of time that your nervous system is telling you that you're not okay, then avoiding that and just using exercise as a means to feel better and heal is always going to be the first, like that's the gold, right? That's what you want.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think you made a really important point, especially about people that are injured, about having fun, because you can probably speak to this better than I can, but the psychosomatic portion of it is that when you're injured, when you're in pain, like you're probably just in a worse mood. You're having a bad time because you're feeling that input of pain constantly. So even just like having fun in a session where even if you're not doing something to fix the issue, you're doing something, that's maybe parallel to it, that maybe it's not fixing it, but it's not making it worse, and you're moving, you're having a good time, like that's going to put you in a better place than had you not done that. And that might even downregulate pain because you're less stressed out about this injury, and you're kind of getting that sort of trust and that buy-in with yourself that like, oh, like I can be functional, I can still do things without being in pain. So that can be, a huge part to all of this. And that comes with the interpersonal side. It's like, don't be just like another fucking dumbbell in the gym. Like have a personality, like make some jokes, like talk some shit to your clients. Like it's make them have a good time and like pull them out of whatever they're doing, the mood that they're in, and then put them in the space that you need them to be in to have a productive session, even if that's just having fun. So I think that's a really great point.
Absolutely. If you don't like having fun with people, then I don't know why you'd be working with people in person. It's a service industry at its core, right? So it's like You're working with people. You can't, and if I wasn't having fun with it, like again, this is not a job that you get into to make a lot of money. This is not a job that you get into because it's easy or because you don't get to work a lot of hours. It's a lot of hours. There's not a lot of money for a while. I mean, you can definitely do really well with it, but for a while, there's not a lot of money. So if you don't love it, like what's the point? I love talking to my clients. I love going in. I love hearing their stories. I see them more than I see some of my family members and friends. So it's like you have fun with them. You have your jokes. And like I said before, it's chicken or the egg when it comes to the brain, the physiology and the psychology, like chicken or the egg. We don't know what comes first, but we know that when you have a good attitude and a good mindset, you feel better. And when you feel better, it's easier to have a good attitude and good mindset. Those things are going to go hand in hand. And it's definitely easier said than done in certain cases. Like I worked with people who have been in chronic pain for years. And what I tell them sometimes, because they do always walk out of the session feeling better. And what I have to kind of tell them sometimes when they don't see as big of progress, like the big results that they really wanted to see and the expectation that they set for themselves, and I just tell them, look, you keep walking out of here feeling better than when you walked in. We have a good time. You enjoyed the sessions. Think of how your body would feel if you weren't doing this. Like think of how much worse your pain would be if you were not coming in here and moving the way that you needed to move to feel a little bit better. So that's also a big thing too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, thank you for your time today, Veronica. If you guys are interested in working with Veronica, she does do a level 1 lab for us. So if you're not in the level 1, registration is still open for about another week. You guys can hop in her lab on Thursdays. But correct me if I'm wrong, but Veronica, you do have online services as well?
Yeah. I write programs mostly for athletes or people who like to work out at home right now. So if you're interested in kind of my style of programming, don't hesitate to reach out. I always tell people too. I love talking to other coaches. I love when people send me a DM with a question. It's super awesome to see. I've always loved teaching. So this is a really cool way to combine all the things I love as being a part of Prescript. So if anybody ever has any questions or if you're ever in Ottawa and just even want to hit a workout together, always hit me up. I'm always down to be social and chat exercise and help out wherever I can. Because that's what this is about. We're not hiding any information here. It's level everybody up. This is all open. There's no secrets. It's just having a good understanding of how the body works and enjoying being a trainer, enjoying being around people. Be fun. Unreal. Be cool. Yeah. Hell yeah. Thanks for having me, Jay. Appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
You can find me. I'm mostly on the Instagram at Veronica Zuccala, VeronikaZuccala. And then my level 1 labs are Thursdays at 1:30. But yeah, reach out over Instagram and reach out through the labs anytime. Always down for a chat.